It's now that time. We're going to bring a bunch of our speakers back up onto the stage. We're going to do our first panel. So I know they're all keen and itching to go out the back there. So I'd like to welcome back out onto the stage Christian Lago, Russell Hall, Charles Quagliata, John Board, Panikos Spyrou, Stephen Ryan, Liam Sharkey, and Matthew Pappen from the Herbert District, who is the Herbert District Chair as well. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for them as they come back out for the panel. This will be your time to, if you do have questions, we do have two panels. And a few of these guys will be on both panels as well. This one is, obviously, we've got Liam up here from the union as well, so if you've got any questions regarding that, by all means do. We'll have a few of our, we've got a couple of our helpers running up and down the sides with some microphones. For those that do have any questions at all, if there is anyone out there that would like to start us off, I mean, I can get us rolling to get us going, but if anyone does have any questions to start off, would you like to ask any of the guys up here on the stage? Just make yourself known, just stand up if you want to let us know your name, where you're from, and let us rattle off any of the questions that you've got burning inside you that you'd like to ask. If not, what I might do, I might get you guys started, I guess, and this can be open to the whole panel as such. What are some of the potential solutions that we could bring forward to help out the situation that we're in? I'd open that up to anyone, if anyone would like to take the lead on that one to start us off.
One of the potential solutions is well, like I say, we've been talking to both the unions and the mills, so we understand, the situation on both sides. We know we need a viable milling community, and we also need workers who are paid accordingly, and the mill needs them to be a productive workforce. So, listening to both sides, understanding the argument for one, and giving them a bit of free rein to work it out. It's good to see now that the commissioners come in, so hopefully now negotiations will be stepped up a notch, and a resolution will be closer than what it was yesterday, and everyone then can move on.
That's on. To add on that, I mean, it's a sticky situation we're in as we're a party to the negotiations, and it's sort of got to be negotiated at the table. But for our members and the workers' perspective, it means a lot to them to have community support. So if the community, I mean, they're very much a part of the communities. We know that there's a picture trying to be painted that the mill workers are out on strike again. But we're asking you to understand that these workers have been backed into a corner. They've got no choice. We've been negotiating since March 2023. We also, as a sign of good faith, a week before the crush started, moved our position dramatically and put it to the company that all industrial action would cease effective immediately and let the voting process play out, so we would have a minimum effect on the community. Because the community is at the front of the mind of our workers and our members. Like I said, they're a very big part of the community, they're an integral part of the community, and they're an integral part of keeping these mills running. So any community support that they could get, so they're not painted like the bad guy, that would go a long way.
Just to that, Liam, now that you've moved into mediation, will there be more, more reluctance now to go on these strikes? Will that be hopefully an outcome now that you've moved into mediation?
So you need to understand that the only ability a worker in this country has got to put pressure on their company they're bargaining with to pursue their claims is taking some form of industrial action. That is the only right and form of pressure a worker can do. Wilma have already tried to take the ability of that away from these workers by submitting a section 424, which technically means that if they were successful in this, the workers could no longer take any industrial action to put any pressure on the company. So we just had to sit in there without having the ability to do anything back. There are notices put in for tomorrow, as you know, and there will be a 1 hour stoppage taken tomorrow. Now, we will continue the negotiations next week with the Commissioner, although we are hopeful that it will progress negotiations if Wilmar continue to come in with the same, I suppose, with the same mindset, that's a good word I'm looking for, that they have been and that we've been dealing with for the last 18 months, then industrial action, there's a real possibility that it will continue, because as I said, it is the only way workers can put any pressure on the company to encourage them to increase their offer and reach their claims.
Hey, Liam, with the 12-hour stop that they're claiming, it's only a 1 hour rolling stop. Can you explain that?
So there's a bit of a debate around this one. So what it is we're stopping a 1 hour stop, okay? And what Wilmar are claiming is that to safely shut down the mills, it takes Wilmar are claiming 18 hours, okay? Now, that's not entirely correct. All the mills run differently, and the time frame is different in every mill depending on how much, and I've never worked in a sugar mill, this is what I'm hearing from my members, so I hope I get this right. But the time frames can be different in every mill based on how much juice is in the boiler and temperatures and where they're at. All mills can vary on the shutdown process, but the feedback that we've been given from the members who work in these mills and deal with these pieces of equipment every day is the reality is more like 8 to 12 hours. I've also had our member down at Plain Creek tell us that on the last stoppage last week, they shut the boiler down 45 minutes before it was proceeded to stop. So there's different ways they can shut them down. There's different ways they can do it. I mean, in blackouts, you see the mill stop. When there's maintenance issues, which has been a bloody awful lot of them lately, the mill stop for a duration of 3 hours and then they're back going again. So although there is some element of truth to an extended shutdown period, I can guarantee you that it's not the 18 hours that they're spruiking. And in the last stoppage, they actually utilised the stoppage, put out there that the time frame for the mill to shut down was due to the industrial action, but they actually shut the mills down far earlier than they needed to and utilised it for a maintenance day. The morning of the stoppage, I was in one of the mills at 9 o'clock in the morning. The stoppage wasn't until 12. That whole mill was already completely shut down, doing a caustic clean, and things were running through it and things were all barricaded off. So they shut the mill down far earlier than was needed to if they were going to just shut it down for the 1 hour stop, which was notified, and then they hid that time frame behind blaming the industrial action.
All right, thank you for that.
I hope that clears that up.
I guess, has anyone got any questions at this stage? So I guess if you didn't quite hear that, he's wanted to clarify, so does the 1 hour stop for, correct me if I'm wrong on this one too, please, a 1 hour stop, or is it a 10 hour, basically a rolling 10 hour sort of rough thing? Is that correct? Am I on the right path on that one? Sorry.
So obviously different.
We'll get a mic.
There's a lot of different factors that can weigh in on that, and that's including whether if the operators of the boilers and stuff are members of the union, if they're partaking in it. Although, to answer your question, if the mill was to stop for a 1 hour period and the mill was to be shut down and wound down like Wilmar is saying it needs to be, then my understanding is it should be more like an 8 to 12 hour time frame, which the productivity would be down, not the 18 hours that's been claimed.
Yeah, that's right, Talbot. The 1 hour stop to safely shut down the mill, the mills say that they need, at least that 10 hours. So the 1 hour stop does turn into 8 hours at a minimum.
So I guess to clarify on that, I guess is the point that's being pushed is going, one party is saying it's going to be 18 hours, whereas we're clarifying that it's not going to be an 18 hour stoppage. It will be longer than what gets worded, but that's to make it safe, obviously, then, because then otherwise, if you don't do it safely, the mill could be shut down for quite longer. I guess if someone from the outside looking in, I guess that's what I take away from that one. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but yeah, basically, there's a proper process that's got to be followed.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's taken longer than the 18 or 8 hours or whatever they claim to be, whatever the length of the stop is, because they then struggle to get going again. So that then turns into a 1 hour stop, then turns into a 24, unfortunately, or maybe even longer.
Liam, I've got one. I've worked in the mines, probably a lot of people have, but just say on a BMA site, 500 people, only 100 people work from BMA, or the other 400 are contractors. Obviously, I think that's Wilmar's long game to get rid of employees and have contractors. Is that far away, do you think? Or overseas labour? Like if they can piss their employees off enough that they leave, then can they pull the overseas labour card quicker? Or what's your thoughts on that? Or what are the troops' thoughts? Like, to get on the front foot, if I was working at a mill, I'd be asking, should I set up my own contracting business, Joe Blow electrician, and contract back to the mill? Or someone like Dawson's, or, you know, like, should we, as communities, should we be looking on the front foot to employ Dawson's to supply labour to the mill? And I know, like, having a full-time job is excellent. You need it when you buy a house, car, whatever. Like, running your own contracting business back is you forfeit all that. But if you're full-time for, say, a labour hire company, is there any feeling that could happen in the future?
I mean, I don't know what the future plans are for Wilmar. We're already starting to see a large amount of contractors in the mills, and we're starting to see the effects of that now with the efficiency of the mills. So it is something we really want to avoid. And the way to avoid that is keeping the long-term staff by getting a wage increase that can pay the bills at the end of the week. I have had a few, and this is only hearsay, and I have actually questioned Wilmar in the negotiations, and they pushed it away pretty quick, but I have had a few people tell me that they've heard conversations going on of Wilmar's long-term plan to try and paint the image that they can't get local staff, and they need the ability to be able to bring in their own offshore workforce. Now, I've only heard this third hand, but I've heard it by a few people, and it is really concerning. I mean, we know the money Wilmar's got, and we know the money that our wage increase is costing, and it's a drop in the water compared to what they can afford realistically. So they could double these workers' wages and still make a huge profit. So, I mean, I don't know how far away we are from that. All I'm looking at is landing this agreement and trying to get the best possible outcomes we can for the workers in the mills. And I mean, as you know, a happy workforce is a productive workforce. So it is concerning them things we're hearing in the background. It's obviously something that we'll have a big stance against, but one thing at a time, and that's trying to get the outcomes in this agreement for those workers.
Is that the only, I guess the only problem situation at the moment for the mills and towards back to our farmers as well? The effect, obviously, from industrial action is always going to upset the flow of anything. But is that the only issues that they've got there? Is that the reasons why the mills aren't performing the way that they should, or they're not ready when they are? Does that all stem back to this unhappy workforce?
Well, an unhappy workforce and the amount of skilled workforce that are leaving. I mean, like I said, there are one of the mills in the Burdekin now currently have 7 vacant electrical positions, and I could sit here and give you example after example of long 40-year employees leaving with all the knowledge up here that they know where to go to when there's an issue and not that valve or turn that off, and they're just walking away. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to fix all the issues overnight, because there's no one real fix to all issues overnight, but I'll tell you what, it'll go a long way to having a good, reliable staff that know the mills, that care about the mills, and to fixing them and having them ready, because the feedback that we're getting from membership is that a lot of stuff that contractors are touching is done wrong, and then they're having to go back and fix it. And then when the mills, there's a big rush to get it all done. And then when the mills are coming on, they're realising that the jobs that are done haven't been done correctly. So corners are being cut, the knowledge isn't there. So I think it would go, being able to attract and retain their own staff. We're also hearing that there's a lot of staff that have left that are watching this dispute closely, saying, has it landed yet? And if it lands, they want to come back to the mills, but they just can't afford to at the moment. So I don't think it'll fix every issue overnight, but I think it'll go a long way to, I mean, I heard an interesting comment yesterday. The highest paid millers in the industry is Mulgrave. And Mulgrave run at over 90% efficiency. So them numbers speak for themselves.
I don't think there's any argument that when you've got a happy workforce that the work rolls through quite nicely. You see that across the board. But we've got another question over here. Yeah,
just sort of touching on what you were saying. I totally support the unions, and they were saying about overseas workers. I believe that's what their end game is, because we all know that those people will work for a third of what you're currently being paid, and then half of that third will go overseas. Now, I don't know if this is a question for the panel or any politician that's here, but what's the legislation, government, when international companies come and set up in Australia? Do they have rules and regulations that they have to live by? Do they have a certain standard that they have to uphold? Because the average Australian company does. So is anyone able to give me an answer to that or find out information? Is that an avenue that we're able to pursue?
Yeah, that's something that we're exploring. Yes, that is true. There are obligations. There is obviously Australian legislation. It's something that we're doing a bit of a resume of, but also when Wilmar bought in, just like any foreign entity buys in, they have to have an Australian entity to own and to operate their business. In this case, they bought Sugarcane. But they made certain commitments under the Foreign Investment Review Board. At the time, I recall that they were indicative and non-binding, which is a real shame, really, that they're allowed, if that is the case, to enter the country under non-binding conditions. But again, it's something that we're having a look at again, because they did make certain assurances, and I'm not sure from memory what assurance they made around the labour force, but again, it's something that we're having a look at right across what assurances they made.
And it's going to be pursued, because we've seen it with large companies. Qantas is one of them. When their CEO walked out and left that company, I don't even know if he still is answerable to the Australian government when they had that review. So sometimes people in high places seem to get away with a lot more in one way or another.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's sort of what I was saying. Like, short term, yes, you need to sort this EBA out and get it right, but long term, I agree. I think that's their game long term. So I don't know. For me, is there like definitely need to sort that out and try and get it good. But next EBA will be the same sort of going forward. Is there something we can do or document now to say when they try and pull that trigger of foreign investment, say, hang on, back in 2024, all this happened, and sort of, I don't know, get on the front foot a bit.
So as I was saying, it has been brought to my attention pretty recently, these conversations, and it's pretty concerning. Conversations have been had and escalated up about, hey, this is a bit of a red flag. Maybe this should be noted and pushed up. So like I said, there's nothing in concrete, but conversations have been had around that and being able to avoid it. From what I understand is they can't currently bring it in, especially with trade staff at the moment. And the conversations that people have had with me is that they are trying to demonstrate that they cannot fill these positions, hence they need to bring their own staff in offshore. So, I mean, we all know that back in the day, it was a proud place to work, the mill, it was a high-paid job. If people were lining up to get in the doors, they wouldn't have had this issue and they wouldn't have had the ability to be able to paint this picture that, hey, we can't fill our vacancies, we need this ability. So I suppose it's a big drive from us to be able to get the wages back up competitive again, so people do want to work in the mills, so people are working there. So when they do put a vacancy up, there's more applications than there is position. So then it will squash that theory out because they won't be able to demonstrate it, which means they won't be able to have the ability to do that. At the moment, the real risk is if they keep pushing wages back, because what they've got on the table right now for a wage increase is technically a wage cut in regards to how inflation's running. I mean, these workers, since 2019, 2020, when their agreement came into effect, compared to now, they're today sitting 14.8% behind inflation in regards to their pay increases to where inflation figures are. So if they're currently sitting 14.8% today and Wilmar's got 14.25% on the table over 3.5 years, then what that means is if inflation sits at 0% for the next 3.5 years, then in 3.5 years' time they'll only be 0.7% behind inflation. We need to fix it now.
Right, there's a gentleman just at the front here.
Yeah, look, I do feel sorry for the bill workers, but never overthink that. The guys that we can employ from overseas cannot do the job. You were saying that the expertise is there at the moment and they know where to turn the switch and this and that, but I've got a guy right beside me here, he employs hundreds of them. And he's taught them in a very short time how to operate. So don't ever overlook and don't ever underestimate that Wilmar can do that. That's my opinion to you, to the union guys and to your workers. Don't overlook that because it could happen.
Thank you. Just to your comment before about not overlooking the value and the skill that foreign workers bring in, I don't think that's our issue here. We understand that everybody deserves to have good paying jobs, but what is important to our members is that they are part of your community. They understand that these jobs don't exist without you and what you contribute to this community, and they understand that their presence in this community is also valued as well. They're not looking to get the highest rates of pay. They're not looking to be, that greedy that they've got to be undercut by foreign labour. They just want to be able to pay their bills and stay in the community that most of them grew up in. That is very important to them. It's where their values lie, and they want to stay here. They're seeking your support to be able to do that. They also understand that the skill that they have helps you be profitable as well. Some of the large concerns with Wilmar is about the productivity of the mill. That's not happening by accident. Liam's touched on the contractors in the mill. There are large amounts of contractors. They do have union agreements, those contractors, but they're not invested in these mills in the same way as the direct employees are. Their obligations to the mill and the productivity are not the same. They don't have to live in these towns with all of you and go down the main street and do their shopping. These people want to stay in these towns with good paying jobs and contribute to their community.
One at the back here as well, if we've got a question for the panel.
First of all, I'd just like to thank the QCAR board today for holding the forum. But I do have a question. To say that I'm not surprised that Wilmar or the Sugar Milling Council aren't here today would be an understatement. But what is it going to take to hold these millers accountable for the issues that we have? We've been negotiating cane supply agreements for years, the same as the union's been negotiating their EBAs for their members, and we're having issues. When are we going to hold them accountable through the Sugar Code of Conduct? We brought the Sugar Code of Conduct into this industry for a reason, to make them accountable. And if I just got 1 second, this is out of the Sugar Code of Conduct from the ACCC, where parties can't agree on the terms of a supply contract or on supply agreement. The Sugar Code sets out a process for pre-contractual arbitration. As long as the conditions in the code around arbitration are met, a negotiating party may refer the dispute to an independent arbitrator to make a determination. As I said, in the Herbert, we have been negotiating our cane supply agreement for years. And as soon as they sit down at the negotiating table, their first comment is, you can't cost us a cent. So when are we going to hold them accountable and take in the code of conduct?
What is the feeling from the floor with that?
Be careful what you wish for when it comes to triggering the code just yet, because there's a massive elephant in the room here today, and it's all these empty seats here. Now, the disunity that is in our industry is very unfortunate, but it plays right into their hands. That code doesn't, or triggering that code and trying to act on it doesn't come without a cost, and it would be a massive cost. Wilmar would outspend QCAR very easily. Wouldn't outspend the entire industry if we were together, but we're not. Are the politicians still here? We still got the 3 politicians in the room? They're all gone. Funny that. Look, Wilmar is playing this game very well. They've got the unions doing exactly what they want them to do. And I feel for you guys, I'm on your side. But they're creating the bad story. The ASMC's out putting the bad story. If we went down this road, the disunity would be on display. Bad story. But this is not going to end, it's going to keep going. So unless we think bigger than the stories here today and the panel and what they're talking about, we're going to keep going down that road. This is getting to need a Senate inquiry or something of the like. There's other Australian laws they're breaking before we need to go near that code of conduct. So that's my take.
Well, I just want to see them held accountable, mate. I agree with you. We've been in this industry for a while. There's been many here that have been in it longer than I have. But Wilmar is basically doing what they see fit to suit themselves. They are not treating growers fairly and respectfully.
There is a review process. It should have been triggered. Now, usually it's your politicians that should trigger this thing. It hasn't been. They're not interested. Again, it shouldn't be left to us to fight this. The politicians know it's happening. They've left. There's no camera. They should have been put on the spot beforehand.
Yeah, and unfortunately there's arguments on both sides. Like I say, the millers are pretty good at putting their spin on it when it comes to the media and everyone and politicians alike. So, yeah, we have to tread carefully. There's probably a series of checkpoints that we have to go through. You know, we need to get our ducks in the line. But, something like that would take an emotional and financial toll on the industry. And we have to stay united. And it's unfortunate today to see that, you know, other member organisations, we didn't get that support. As you can see with the empty seats, this hall should have been full. So that's, I suppose, a reflection on where we are as an industry at the moment, which is sad.
All right, I think we've got a question up the back there. If we've got a question for the panel, that would be great. Thank you.
It's not really a question. I just want to say in this country, there is so much work around. If you've got skills and you don't want to work for the money that Walmart pays, why are you still there? The unions have waited right up to now, and they're using us to force Walmart to up the payments. I think this should have been resolved before the crushing started, and pay is not going to give them any more people. We as small businesses cannot find anybody. People are against bringing in people from outside. Well, I'm telling you, I am about ready to close my business because I cannot keep my business running because I can't find people, and we've advertised everywhere. So Wilmar, those people knew what they were getting. If they want to get more money, go to the mines or go somewhere else where you can get more money, but they don't want to. I don't understand. The unions have closed so many businesses in this country, they should be ashamed of themselves. And I believe If you're not happy at one place, you can walk next door, get a job that is going to pay you with what you're happy with. And I cannot understand people striking in Australia. They should go to another country and see how hard it is there. That's how I feel.
All right, I think we've had some very good valid points there, yep.
That doesn't solve the problem, but at all. Like, I take my haul out and harvester drivers. If I could go back 5 years ago and pay what I had to pay for them, that doesn't help that, where you're going to take, what are we going back to a third world country where we're just going to pay them $10 an hour? I know what you're saying, but there's got to be a certain standard of living in Australia. Well, I hope you don't get what you wish for, but anyway, I think you better move on, Mick.
Yeah, all right. So what we might do is we might wrap up this panel here, ladies and gentlemen. I think we sort of hit a bit of a stalemate there. But thank you very much. If you could please put your hands together for our panel for this section. We will get ourselves set up for the second panel, which will include more on the lines of our energy estate as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, please thank you once again to the panel members that are in this section here, and we'll get our next panel up